Hello again. Leon Morris, Jesus is the Christ, studies in the theology of John, the I am sayings, this time I am, without any predicate. A number of times John reports that Jesus used I am construction without qualifying it with a predicate, as in the examples so far noted, i.e., I am the resurrection of the life, I am the good shepherd. This occurs, for example, in the conversation Jesus had with the woman at the well, when she says that matters of which they are speaking are matters to be dealt with by the Messiah when he comes. Jesus replies, I am who am speaking to you, John 4:26. Ethelbert Stauffer denies that this is an indirect messianic affirmation and insists that John wishes Jesus' answer to be understood as the theophanic formula. And then there's a footnote to that. And the theophanic formula, by the way, is the Hebrew words Anihu, that is A-N-I-H-U. These are quotations from not so much Isaiah, rather Exodus, where we think he's quoting from if we're not students of the Greek, but Hebrew references. Jesus would be speaking Aramaic, of course. He's probably referring, therefore, to the Anihu passages, I am passages of Isaiah. The footnote is about Stauffer in his book, Jesus and His Story. Anihu, Stauffer says, is the Hebrew understanding or underlying I am. Stauffer proceeds to give 6 reasons for holding this view and concludes Jesus chooses intentionally the veiled formula of self-revelation from Isaiah 52:6 without taking account of the messianist terminology of the Samaritans. His saying of self-revelation is a mystery, a sign, a mashal. Stauffer thinks that this I am is the clearest, boldest, and deepest self-affirmation of Jesus. It means, quote, where I am, there is God. There God lives, speaks, calls, asks, acts, decides, loves, chooses, forgives, rejects, hardens, suffers, dies. Nothing bolder can be said or imagined. That's all Stauffer, direct quote. And then Morris goes on. Edward D. Freed, by contrast, points out that the Baptist uses the I am formula in his denial that he is the Christ. That's in John 1:20 and repeated in 3:28. Freed points out that the next occurrence of the formula is in 4:26, and he says, certainly one way, if not the only correct way, to convey the meaning of the Greek ego eimi in this context is to understand Messiah or Christ of the sentence before it as the predicate with which the Greek is in apposition. In contrast to the Baptist negative statement, Jesus is reported as affirming his messiahship through the use of ego eimi. So Freed disagrees with Stauffer, but both positions are legitimate interpretations of the Greek. Freed's appeal to the context is certainly impressive, but Stauffer, Morris says, has certainly done us a service in drawing attention to the fact that the words are the solemn words of Deity. And then there's another footnote about Stauffer at the bottom. Stauffer is often held to take up an extreme position, therefore not many agree wholeheartedly with him. But Philip Harner points out that the Old Testament use of Anihu is part of the background of the use of the expression in John. And of this he says, the phrase Anihu signifies that Yahweh alone is God, in contrast to the so-called gods of the various peoples of the world. He speaks of it as this assertion of exclusive monotheism. That's from a booklet by Harner called The I Am of the Fourth Gospel. Morris goes on, and this is surely the way we should understand the words of Jesus when he came walking on the water to the storm-tossed disciples. They were terrified at the sight of Jesus approaching them. The synoptists tell us that they thought they were seeing a phantom. He calmed them with the words, I am. Don't be afraid. John 6:20. But this may be no more than a way of self-identification, as Barrett thinks, but the style is the style of Deity, and it accords with this that Jesus came walking on the water. A somewhat similar passage is that in which Jesus says, I am he who bears witness about myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness about me. That's 8:18. It is possible that Jesus means no more than I bear witness, but this does not seem likely. He is surely affirming in the style of deity that he stands closer to the Father than do people in general. Jesus further said to some of the Jews, "Unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins." The meaning of dying in sins is not spelled out, but clearly it is a dreadful fate. And people are saved from this, Jesus says, only when they come to have faith in him as I am. Later he says to the disciples, "I tell you before it happens, so that when it happens you may believe that I am." That's 13:19. In both passages we find the Johannine emphasis on the importance of believing, and in both it is linked with Jesus' own person. In both, Jesus is saying that it is important that those addressed come to trust him as the I am, which looks very much like a claim to sharing in the nature of deity. People must see Jesus as one with the Father and trust in him as such. Perhaps this is the place to notice further that in his prayer in the upper room, Jesus says that the Father has given him his own name, John 17:11, which looks like an affirmation that he shares in all that the name of God stands for. Then there's a footnote, Raymond Brown, talking about the significance of the I am here. Raymond Brown, the Roman Catholic scholar, says, well, he finds examples of I am as the name of God in the Old Testament, and again goes like Harner does and Stauffer does to Isaiah servant passages, Isaiah 40 through 52. And Brown says the use of I am as a divine name in late Judaism may explain the many Johannine references to the divine name that Jesus bears. And that's in his Gospel according to John, the double volume in the Anchor Bible series. I'll put in a link to the debate over the I am claims. Is Jesus God or a God? And I put in a link here to A.T. Robertson, the great Greek grammarian, one of the greatest of Greek grammarians, on the I am sayings of John 1. And I'll also put in a link to our John playlist, in which we have a complete book by Robertson, by the way, on the divinity of Christ in the Gospel of John. See you next time.